I never thought my story would start in an airport. Most people go there chasing dreams, love, or maybe a long-awaited vacation. But for me, that cold morning was the day I realized what betrayal truly feels like. My name's Robert. I'm 71 years old, and until last year, I thought I'd raised a good son. After my wife, Helen, passed away, I spent my days sitting on that same old porch, drinking coffee she used to make every morning. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that swallows you whole. That's when Mike, my son, and his wife Ashley moved in. They said it was to help me around the house. At first, I thought God had blessed me twice. They were smiling, kind, respectful. Ashley called me Dad with a sweetness that reminded me of Helen. She'd bring me coffee, fold my laundry, and say things like, "You deserve to relax, Dad. You've worked your whole life." And I believed her. I believe both of them. Because that's what you do with family. You trust them. But I started noticing little changes. Mike began managing all my mail. Ashley kept my checkbook in the kitchen drawer for convenience. Bills I used to pay mysteriously disappeared, replaced by their names. Still, I told myself it was fine. Maybe I was overthinking. One night over dinner, Mike looked at me, his voice calm but serious. "Dad, it's time we talk about the house." I froze. "The house?" I asked. Ashley leaned forward, hands folded neatly like she'd practiced it. "We just think it'd be easier if we took care of the property legally. That way, if something happens, we don't have to go through courts and paperwork." Mike nodded. "Yeah, it's just a signature." "Dad, for convenience. Nothing changes. You'll still live here, of course." It sounded reasonable, logical, and yet, something in me hesitated. That night, I sat alone, staring at the photo of Helen. Her smile, frozen in that golden frame, almost seemed like a warning. But I was tired of loneliness, tired of fighting small doubts. So, the next morning, when they brought me the papers, I signed them. The pen scraped softly against the paper, sealing my trust with a single stroke. Ashley hugged me. "Thank you, Dad. You won't regret this." I smiled back, not knowing that I already had. Weeks passed. They were happier than ever, laughing, planning trips, buying new clothes. And then one evening, Mike came home with plane tickets. "Dad, we're taking you to Florida. You've been stuck here too long. It's time for a break." Florida. The place Helen always wanted to visit. It felt like fate. Maybe this was her way of sending me peace. I packed my old suitcase, even brought her scarf, her favorite blue one. The morning of the trip, everything felt right. Mike helped load the car, Ashley brought coffee, and I actually caught myself smiling. At the airport, they took photos, laughing. Ashley wrapped her arm around me for a selfie. I thought, this is what family looks like. We got to the check-in counter and Mike said, "Dad, wait here. We'll handle the luggage real quick." So I waited. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. I checked my watch, smiled politely at the people passing by. Then an hour went by. I called Mike. No answer. Ashley, straight to voicemail. Another 15 minutes. I told myself, maybe they got stuck at security. Then my phone buzzed. A message. Just one. "You'll be fine, Dad. It's our house now. Take care." I stared at the screen. My hands began to tremble. The airport noise faded into nothing. Just silence. Heavy and endless. I sat down on a metal bench, the kind that's too cold no matter the season. I read the message again and again until my vision blurred. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My son, my own flesh and blood, had left me there like I was baggage too heavy to carry. People walked past, laughing, rushing to flights, hugging loved ones, and I just sat there, invisible. Hours passed before I finally stood up. The staff asked if I needed help, but I just shook my head. Because how do you explain being abandoned by your own child? Outside, the wind was sharp. It cut through my jacket, through my bones. I caught a cab home. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I had nowhere else to be. When I reached the house, my house, there was a new lock on the door. A piece of paper taped to the window read, "No trespassing." My name wasn't on it anymore, and that's when it hit me. The papers I'd signed, the smiles, the hugs. It had all been part of the plan. I sat on the curb, the evening light fading, and I whispered to no one. Helen, I think I failed our son. But somewhere inside that pain, a flicker of something else lit up. Quiet, steady, and cold. Not anger, not revenge, just resolve. Because I might have lost my house that day. But what Mike and Ashley didn't know was that the deed they made me sign wasn't what they thought it was. Music shifts from sorrowful to faint suspense. Camera closes in on his face, calm, but determined. They thought they'd taken everything from me, but that signature was the start of their nightmare. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the back of the taxi long after we'd stopped, staring at my house. The porch light still glowing like nothing had happened. My home. The one I'd built with my hands, with Helen by my side, and now it belonged to strangers who carried my last name. But I didn't knock, I didn't yell, I just looked at the windows where I used to see my wife reading, and I thought, maybe this was the price of being blind to the people you love. The driver asked quietly, "You okay, sir?" I nodded. "Not yet," I said, "but I will be." He drove off, and I sat there on the curb until the sun came up. The next morning, I went to the diner Helen and I used to visit every Sunday. The waitress, June, recognized me right away. "Robert, haven't seen you in months. Where's Mike and Ashley?" I forced a smile. "Home," I said. Right where they wanted to be. She didn't ask more, but when she placed my coffee down, she left a small card on the table, my old friend's business card, Carl Emerson, attorney at law. I hadn't seen Carl in years. We went to high school together before he became one of the sharpest lawyers in town. And in that moment, I realized maybe God was giving me one last chance to fight back. Later that day, I walked into Carl's office, still wearing the same clothes from the airport. He looked up, surprised. Then his eyes softened. "Jesus, Robert, you look like hell. What happened?" I told him everything, from the deed to the text message. He didn't interrupt, not once. Just sat there, listening, tapping his pen slowly against the table. When I finished, he leaned back and said quietly, "Do you still have a copy of the document?" I pulled out the envelope Ashley had given me for safekeeping. Carl adjusted his glasses and began reading. 10 seconds in, his eyebrows lifted. By the first page, he was smiling. By the second, he started laughing. "Robert, you clever son of a gun." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" He turned the paper around and pointed to a paragraph near the bottom, a clause I'd almost forgotten about. "This deed is a conditional transfer," he read. "Ownership remains valid only under continuous cohabitation and mutual care of the grantor." I blinked. Meaning, Carl said, leaning forward, "if they abandon you or fail to provide care, the deed becomes void." Automatically, I stared at him. My hands trembled again, but this time not from pain. "Carl, I didn't even remember that clause. Helen, she added it years ago when we updated our will, said she never wanted anyone to take the house unless they took care of us." Carl chuckled softly. "Well, your late wife just saved your skin, my friend." The next few days, Carl handled everything. He filed the notice, contacted the county recorder's office, and within a week, the deed reverted back to my name, legally, quietly. I didn't tell Mike or Ashley, not yet. Instead, I rented a small room downtown and waited, because sometimes revenge doesn't need noise. It needs timing. 3 weeks later, Mike called. His voice was tight, rushed. "Dad, hey, we were wondering if you'd like to come over for dinner." "Dinner?" I could almost hear Ashley whispering beside him. They thought the guilt was fading, that I was still broken, so I said, "Sure, son, I'd love to." That Saturday night, I stood at my front door again. Ashley greeted me with that same bright smile. "Dad, we missed you." I nodded, stepping inside. The living room looked different, new furniture, new photos, like they'd erased me completely. But one picture remained, Helen and me, on our wedding day. It sat crooked on the mantel, like it didn't belong anymore. Over dinner, they tried small talk. Ashley asked if I'd found a new place to live. Mike said, We were worried, Dad. We didn't mean for things to go that way. I set down my fork and looked him in the eye. You left me at an airport, Mike. How exactly was it supposed to go? Silence. Ashley reached for his hand, whispering, We just thought it'd be easier if we handled the house. We didn't want things messy later. I leaned back. Messy? I said quietly. You think this is messy? You have no idea what messy looks like. They exchanged a glance. Mike frowned. What are you saying? I smiled faintly. I'm saying you might want to check the mail on Monday. That Monday they did. And by Tuesday morning, I got the call. Mike's voice was shaking. Dad, what did you do? I sipped my coffee, sitting on that same porch I thought I'd lost forever. Nothing, son. Just reading the fine print you forgot to. The deed, it's gone. It says the property reverted. To the original owner, yes, which would be me. Silence. Then shouting in the background. Ashley's voice, furious, panicked. Mike came back on, his tone breaking. You tricked us. No, I said softly. You tricked yourself. You were too greedy to notice the one rule that mattered. Take care of me. That's all you had to do. He didn't respond. The line went dead. Days later, I returned to the house. They were gone. The furniture was half missing, boxes scattered across the floor. But the air finally felt clean again. I sat on the porch with Helen's scarf in my hands and whispered, We did it, love. You protected us even after you were gone. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not out of victory, but peace. I remember the night I returned home after that humiliating scene at the airport. The city lights blurred behind the cab window, as if even they couldn't bear to look at me. The house I once called home was silent. Too silent. My son and his wife had already moved in, redecorated, and replaced everything that carried a memory of me. Even the family portraits were gone. But what they didn't know was that I had never really left. You see, I didn't sign their deed. I signed mine. It was a version of the property transfer that placed the ownership under a trust, one that I had created years ago after my wife passed away. They thought they were clever, but their greed blinded them. I had a lawyer, an old friend, who helped me write a clause inside the deed. It stated that if I, the former owner, were ever forced, coerced, or manipulated into transferring property, the deed would automatically revert back to the trust. And guess what? Their recorded call, their messages, the pressure they put on me, all of it was evidence. I knew exactly what they were doing the moment my son's wife smiled at me with that fake sweetness and said, Don't worry, Dad, it's just a formality. That was the moment I started documenting everything. For weeks after they took the house, I stayed at a small motel near the edge of town. It was quiet, cheap, and anonymous, perfect for what I needed. Every night, I wrote down every detail of what happened, the way they made me sign, the lies they told, the things they took. Then, I sent copies of my notes to my lawyer and kept backups in multiple places. But my plan wasn't about revenge, not yet. My plan was about teaching them what loss feels like. I waited, I watched, I let them believe they had won. My son quit his job, thinking the house was a free pass to an easy life. His wife started showing off on social media. Our new home, our new life, finally free. Every post was a knife in my chest, but also a reminder. People always reveal themselves when they think they're untouchable. Then came the first crack in their perfect world. They received a letter, official looking, sealed with my lawyer's firm name. I can only imagine their faces when they read it. Notice of property trust activation. Immediate review required. At first they ignored it. Arrogance makes people careless. But a week later, the second letter came, this time from the county office. The house title was under legal review. Their loan applications froze. Their credit card company flagged their accounts, and the mortgage they secretly tried to take out against the house got declined. That's when my phone rang. Dad, what's happening? My son asked, his voice cracking between fear and anger. Oh, I said calmly. I thought you said the house was yours. Why ask me? There was silence on the line, the kind of silence that tastes like panic. Days turned into weeks. They tried everything. calling the lawyer, going to the office, even begging me to come over and talk things out. But I didn't budge. I told them, "You left me at the airport like garbage. Now you can clean up the mess you made." And I meant it. But the real turning point came when the neighbors started noticing something strange. Letters piling up, real estate agents visiting, and one night an officer posting an official notice on their front gate. Foreclosure review, pending trust claim. It was over. I didn't take pleasure in watching them lose control. I didn't laugh. I just felt empty. Because beneath all the anger and betrayal, a part of me still loved my son. A part of me wanted him to come to me, not to fight for the house, but to apologize, to say, "Dad, I'm sorry." But that never came. Instead, I received a message from his wife. "You'll regret this. You're destroying your own family." She still didn't get it. I wasn't destroying my family. They already had, the moment they chose greed over love. A month later, I went to the property myself, not to confront them, but to see the place one last time. The gate was unlocked, the garden was dying, the paint had started to peel. Inside, boxes were everywhere. They were moving out. My son wasn't there, but his wife was, packing angrily, muttering curses under her breath. When she saw me, she froze. "You!" she spat. "This is your fault." I looked around the living room, at the walls that once echoed laughter, birthdays, and Christmas mornings. Then I met her eyes and said quietly, "No, this is his fault. You both forgot what this home meant." As I turned to leave, she shouted after me, "You're heartless." Maybe she was right. Maybe I had become cold. But pain does that to a man. As I walked down the path toward the gate, I took one last look back at the house that no longer belonged to them or to me. It now belonged to something greater, the truth. And while they were packing their boxes, I was signing new papers, not to reclaim the house, but to donate it to a veterans foundation, a place where people who had lost everything could find shelter again. That was my final move. My son and his wife had built their nightmare with their own hands. I just handed them the mirror to see it. The house was gone, signed over, donated, closed. And yet, for weeks I still woke up every morning at the exact same time, 5:45 a.m., as if I were still living there. I'd reach for the window curtain, half expecting to see the old oak tree outside my room, the one my son used to climb when he was 7. But all I saw was the dim light of the motel parking lot flickering against the curtains. It was strange. I had gotten justice. I had taken back control. But I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. Every victory has a cost, and mine was silence. Days blurred together. The small motel room had become a cage of its own kind. 4 walls, 1 chair, 1 bed, and my thoughts echoing louder than ever. I tried to distract myself. Long walks, old jazz records, cheap coffee that tasted like burnt paper. But there was no escaping that silence. Sometimes I'd see a young father with his son in the park, and for a second I'd remember the laughter, the sound of small feet running through the backyard, the smell of pancakes on Sunday mornings. And I'd ask myself, when did we lose it all? Was it when his mother died? Was it when I started working too much? Or was it the moment I stopped listening to the boy who only wanted to be heard? Regret has a way of whispering things when you're alone. Then, one evening, as I was sitting by the motel window, watching the sunset sink behind the city skyline, I heard a knock on the door, 3 soft taps. I hesitated. No one ever visited me. When I opened it, my heart almost stopped. It was him. My son. He looked older, not by years, but by guilt. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes red. For a long second, neither of us said a word. The air was heavy with everything left unsaid. "Dad," he finally murmured, his voice shaking. "Can I come in?" I nodded, stepping aside. He walked in like a man returning to a memory he didn't deserve. He sat down at the edge of the bed, his hands trembling. I could tell he'd rehearsed this moment, maybe 100 times. "I lost everything," he said. "I know." "She left," he continued. "Took whatever money was left in our account, said I ruined her life." I stayed silent. He looked up at me, desperate, tears glinting in his eyes. "Dad, I messed up. I don't know what I was thinking. I thought you'd be fine. I thought you'd forgive me later. I just wanted—" He choked on his words. "I just wanted an easier life," I sighed. "And did it make your life easier?" He shook his head. "No, it made it empty." For a long moment, all I could hear was the hum of the old motel refrigerator. I wanted to yell, to tell him how much he'd hurt me. But looking at him, broken, defeated, I realized he already knew. Life had done the punishing for me. I walked over to the small table and poured 2 cups of coffee. He smiled faintly. "Still black, huh?" "Still the only way to drink it," I said. We sat in silence. This time, it wasn't heavy. It was healing. After a while, he said, "I saw what you did with the house, the donation. People are talking about it online. They called you the man who gave his home to strangers after being betrayed." He let out a small, broken laugh. "Guess you became a hero." I looked out the window. "I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because I didn't want that house to rot with bad memories." He nodded slowly. "Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You don't," I said quietly. He looked down, ashamed. "But you'll get it anyway," I added. He looked up sharply, eyes wide. I smiled weakly. "Because I'm your father, and because I made mistakes too. Maybe not like yours, but enough to understand what it feels like to wish for a second chance." He didn't say anything. He just cried. Quiet, heavy tears that fell like confession. And when he leaned forward, I put a hand on his shoulder. Not because I had forgotten what he did, but because I remembered what we once were. We talked for hours, about his mother, about the past, about everything we'd both run away from. It wasn't easy, some words cut deep, but it was real. For the first time in years, it felt real. When he finally stood to leave, he turned to me at the door. "Dad, do you think it's too late for me to start over?" I looked at him, and for a moment, I didn't see the man who betrayed me. I saw the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during road trips. "It's never too late," I said softly. "As long as you're still breathing, it's never too late." He nodded, tears in his eyes, and walked out into the cold night. I watched from the window as he disappeared down the street, hands in his pockets, a lone figure under the streetlights. And just like that, the silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. That night, I slept for the first time in months, not because everything was fixed, but because something inside me had finally stopped bleeding. The next morning, I packed my bags. I wasn't going back to that motel room again. I didn't know where I was headed, maybe somewhere quieter, maybe somewhere new, but I knew one thing. The past was no longer my prison. It was just a story. And stories, no matter how painful, are meant to be told. It had been nearly a year since that night in the motel, the night my son and I finally spoke as father and son again. The world had moved on quietly. The news about the house donation faded away, replaced by new scandals and headlines. The veterans who lived there sometimes sent me postcards, pictures of them rebuilding, repainting, planting flowers in the yard. Every letter was a reminder that something broken could still be made whole. I rented a small cabin by a lake 2 towns over. It wasn't fancy, but it had peace, the kind that doesn't need words. Most mornings I'd sit by the water with a cup of coffee, listening to the sound of ducks breaking the stillness. Life had become simple again. Until one afternoon, a knock came on the door. I opened it, and there he was, my son. But this time, he wasn't the same broken man who'd come to me months ago. He looked calmer, clearer, older, in the right ways. He carried a small brown envelope in his hand. "Hey, Dad," he said with a small smile. "Can I come in?" "Always," I replied. He sat down at the kitchen table, tapping the envelope against his palm nervously. "I've been wanting to bring you this for a while," he said. "It belonged to Mom." I froze. "Your mother?" He nodded. "Yeah. I found it when I was clearing out one of the old storage boxes at the bank. It was addressed to you, but never sent." He slid the envelope across the table. My name was written in her handwriting, soft, familiar, a little shaky at the edges. My throat tightened. It had been so long since I'd seen her writing, yet it felt like she'd written it yesterday. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside was a letter, yellowed slightly with time. My dearest, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get the chance to say goodbye properly. You've always been the strong one, the one who holds the family together, even when it's falling apart. But I worry that strength will turn into silence, that you'll bury your pain instead of healing it. Please don't do that. I know our son is still young. And I know you don't always understand each other, but one day he'll need you, not the father who teaches him right from wrong, but the man who forgives him when he forgets it. I've arranged something small. There's a trust account in both your names, not for the house, not for property, but for something real, his education, his future, his chance to be better than us. Whatever happens, promise me you won't let bitterness destroy what love built. Love always. M. By the time I finished reading, my hands were trembling. The words blurred as tears welled in my eyes. She had known. She had always known. I looked up at my son. He was watching me carefully, his expression heavy with guilt and something softer. Hope. I didn't know about this, he said quietly. I didn't even know she had written to you. But I think she wanted me to find it now. I nodded slowly. She always had a way of knowing what we needed, just not when. He smiled faintly. You know, Dad, I've been going to counseling, trying to fix things, trying to understand why I did what I did. He hesitated. I was angry at you for years. After Mom died, I blamed you for everything. For being distant, for not saving her, for working all the time. I thought taking the house was taking back control. I listened in silence, the lake wind brushing softly against the window. But I was wrong, he continued. You weren't distant. You were just surviving. He swallowed hard. I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry, not just for the house or the lies, for all the years I pushed you away. I didn't say anything right away. I folded the letter gently, placed it back in the envelope, and slid it toward him. Keep it, I said. Your mother wrote it for both of us. He shook his head. No, Dad. Yes, I interrupted softly. You're her legacy too, and maybe this is her way of giving us another chance. He looked down, eyes glistening. I don't deserve it. None of us do, I said, but she'd want us to take it anyway. We both sat in silence, a silence that no longer hurt. Then, after a while, he said something I didn't expect. I've been volunteering at the veterans' home, the one you donated the house to. I help with repairs, cook meals sometimes. It's peaceful there. My chest tightened again. Not from pain this time, but from something close to pride. That's good, I said softly. You're giving back. He smiled faintly. Trying to? One of the guys there calls you the man who traded his house for peace. I chuckled. Maybe I did. The sun began to dip low over the lake, bathing the cabin in amber light. My son stood to leave, but before he reached the door, he turned back and said, Dad, I was thinking maybe we could visit Mom's grave together. It's been a long time. I looked at him for a long moment, my son, no longer the boy who betrayed me, but the man who had learned what love costs. I'd like that, I said quietly. I think she would too. He smiled, and for the first time in years, it felt genuine. Then he left, and the cabin fell into silence once more. But it was the kind of silence that felt like peace, not punishment. That night, as I sat by the window, I reread her letter once more. The paper trembled in my hands, but my heart was steady. She was right. Bitterness destroys what love builds, but forgiveness rebuilds what pain destroys. And as the moon rose high over the lake, I whispered softly to the empty room, I forgive you, son. And thank you, my love, for knowing what I couldn't see. For the first time in my life, I wasn't haunted by the past anymore. I was guided by it. The day we decided to visit her grave was colder than I expected. The wind carried that crisp smell of autumn, the kind that reminds you everything eventually changes. My son picked me up early in the morning. He'd borrowed a truck from the veterans' home, old but reliable, its radio playing low country songs that spoke of regret, love, and forgiveness. Fitting, I suppose, for two men trying to rebuild what was broken. The drive was quiet at first. We didn't need words. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was the silence of understanding, something that had taken years and pain to earn. When we arrived, the cemetery was almost empty. The sun was just beginning to climb, painting the grass gold. We walked side by side down the narrow path until we reached her stone, Margaret Turner, beloved wife and mother. Love endures. Those words carved into marble hit me harder than I expected. My knees felt weak. For years, I couldn't bring myself to come here. I told myself it was because I was busy, or because it hurt too much. But the truth was, I was afraid of facing what I'd lost and what I'd let slip away. My son stood silently beside me, his hands tucked in his coat pockets. He looked different standing there, older, humbler, softer. I could see the boy he used to be, hiding under the man he had become. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I wanted to read her something," he said. His voice trembled as he unfolded the note. "Mom, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't even know if I deserve to stand here. But I found your letter, and it changed everything. You were right. Dad never stopped trying. He never stopped loving us, even when I couldn't see it. I thought I was strong, but I was just angry. I took things that weren't mine, and I broke something that can't be replaced. But we're okay now. You'd be proud of him, Mom. You'd be proud of us." He paused, swallowing hard. "I'm trying to be the kind of man you always believed I could be. I work at the veterans' home now. I fix things. Maybe that's all I can do, fix what I broke." He looked up, eyes shining. "I love you, Mom." He folded the letter carefully and placed it at the base of her grave. Then he turned away, wiping his face. I stayed for a moment longer, my heart full. Of grief, yes, but also something softer. I knelt and whispered, "You did it, Em. You brought him back." As I rose, something caught my eye, a small metallic glint under the headstone flowers. I brushed the petals aside and found a thin silver locket, rusted at the hinge but still intact. My heart stuttered. I remembered it immediately. It was hers. She used to wear it every day. I thought it was lost years ago. I opened it carefully. Inside was a small, faded photo, me holding our son as a baby, and a folded note tucked behind it. It read, "If you ever find this, it means my heart still lives in both of you." The real house isn't built of walls or deeds. It's built of forgiveness. So, if the walls ever fall, rebuild them with love. I closed my eyes. Her handwriting still had the gentle tilt, the same way she used to write grocery lists, birthday cards, or little notes for me to find in my jacket pocket before work. When I showed the note to my son, he broke down again, not out of pain, but release. He hugged me tightly, and for the first time since he was a boy, I hugged him back without hesitation. We stood there for a long time, father and son, bound not by blood or guilt anymore, but by understanding. By the woman who had somehow known exactly how to heal us, even from beyond the grave. As we walked back to the truck, he said, "Dad, I've been saving some money, not much, but enough for a down payment. There's a small fixer-upper near the lake. Needs work, but it's got potential. I was wondering if—" He hesitated. "If you'd help me fix it," I smiled. "You mean you want me to teach you how to rebuild a house?" He laughed softly. "Yeah. Something like that." I looked out toward the horizon. The idea of building again, not just walls and wood, but something meaningful, felt right. "All right," I said. "Let's build it together." And that's what we did. Over the next few months, we worked side by side. Hammer, saw, laughter, silence. The kind of silence that's alive, filled with the sound of two people trying to be better. We patched holes, painted walls, planted new roots. The first time we opened the front door together, he said quietly, "Feels like home." I nodded. It is. Not because of the walls we built, but because of the forgiveness that filled them. Sometimes, when the sun sets and the lake glows gold outside the window, I still feel her there, in the warmth of the light, in the laughter echoing through the house. She's everywhere and nowhere, but always with us. The old me would have said the story ended when they lost the house. But now I understand. The story ended when we found our way home. I don't know if there's such a thing as destiny, or if life is just a long chain of mistakes we keep trying to fix, but I do know this. The real inheritance she left us wasn't money or property or anything written in a will. It was the reminder that no matter how broken we become, love can still build again. And as I sit by the lake each evening, watching my son hammer the last pieces of the porch rail, I finally understand what she meant all along. The real house is the one we carry in our hearts. I take a deep breath, let the wind brush against my face, and whisper into the sunset, "Thank you, Em. We're home now."